Well, good morning, Incarnation. We've continued to live out our whole concept of being a church without walls in a lot of ways over this season. But two of the specific ways that we're going to talk about today are ways that we're engaged in compassionate ministries in our larger community. And so we have a gift today of people who have been connected with those compassionate ministries. Lori Vinyan is here, a member of Incarnation, and Becky Benson, who is a member but also on our staff. And they both have spent time with Ralph Reeder Food Pantry and the Tons of Love Initiative we'll talk about specifically today. But they've also been down to Bethlehem Lutheran in the Midway. And now there's a cooperative community working together for all the mutual aid for the people in that community. And it's just a massive work that's happening in that area. So we want to be able to get a sense from them about what their experience is like today. But we also want to be able to say, what is God continuing to ask us to do in those places? Because I think Incarnation can have a very significant role in continuing the work that has been already started at Bethlehem and at Ralph Reeder, but is very much in need in this particular time. So, Lori and Becky, welcome. Great to have you here today. Let me start with you, Lori. You spent a little bit of time down at Bethlehem with a makeshift, group that started right away, but also the machine that's now developing down there. Tell us about your experience and why that was important for you.
Sure. I guess I felt compassion towards people with food scarcity prior to even the pandemic. And then, of course, with income loss, that food scarcity became much greater. And then, of course, with the death of George Floyd and the devastation of the area, in particular, Midway area, there was literally a crisis. And so although I felt compassion, I also had this energy and desire to do something at the same time. So I poked around a little bit on the internet, found a link to Bethlehem Lutheran, and grabbed a friend. I kind of needed to grab a friend the first time, just saying. But I grabbed a friend, and we drove down, and literally Bethlehem Lutheran is a very small congregation on the other side of the road of Allianz Field. So we parked, we walked over, they gave us instructions, mask, and we got to work. My job in particular was putting a vegetable and a fruit in each of the individual grocery bags that people were going to get. It was a good experience. I decided I needed to get my children involved. I happen to have 2 kids in college and a high school graduate now, I guess. And so I said, you guys come too. And I also grabbed another friend. Again, similar experience, and it was a good experience. I asked my kids yesterday, the ones that are still at home, I asked them, what's your takeaway? And both of them said they will never forget the image of the community members, hundreds of them, standing in line in the hot sun, waiting for a bag of groceries.
Can I just remark on a couple of things? One is, thanks for listening well, and thanks for listening to your heart, because it said something needed to be done. And then not just listening, but responding. And one more layer on that for me was just fantastic about your story is I'm not going to do this alone. And so you invited a friend, you invited your family, and what a critical way for us to think about who we are as community, offering ourselves to community. So thanks for those initial impressions. We'll be back in a second. Becky, what about you?
Yeah, actually, my story is similar. I started, however, by just bringing some groceries here to Incarnation because we had some drop-off opportunities. Yeah. Then I thought, I really need to see this situation, and I need to get involved, get my hands dirty a little bit. So I'm not sure I invited him, but I brought my husband. No, he was invited. And Mark and I went down on a Saturday, and very similarly to Lori, we just got in. And I was impressed by 3 things. First, just the enormous amount of donations that had already been provided. It was this Saturday morning, and they'd been all lined up ready to go for community members to receive. Just the ocean of volunteers was really remarkable, pretty powerful. But the thing that really moved my heart is to see the community members standing in line in the heat. I was really humbled by that. Yeah, and we worked the wipes, and I'll tell you, the big mountain of wipes disappeared so fast, and then there was a point where wipes came in and they went out just as fast. And I believe they went through all the donations that were brought in that one day.
Yeah. But it means that there are families that are massively affected by this.
Yeah.
And the work that we do connects with families that we'll never know their names necessarily, but are part of our larger community, and we get a chance to respond. So, well, again, thank you for saying, you know what, I've heard, but I want to be able to respond too. One of the questions that I have for both of you to respond to just briefly is, as you have been there and now can think about how can incarnation be even more impactful to the work that's happening down there, tell us some of your ideas or thoughts about that.
Well, Bethlehem Lutheran started, like I said, as kind of reactive to a crisis. And they've recently been able to pull back to do a little COVID testing and cleaning. And so they've been able to take a moment and become proactive and join with a large number of people in the community who are also trying to provide services. So they've created this network, the Midway Mutual Aid Network. And now they've had an opportunity to really build on the program and create more segues for us to participate. So I think what you're asking is what Incarnation is planning to do, which is the Drive Up Thursdays. It's very exciting. On every Thursday in June and July, Incarnation is accepting donations, as well as allowing people to use the Sign Up Genius to become drivers and take that donation just to the Ginkgo Coffee House on Snelling and Minnehaha, which is a drop-off spot. So it's a wonderful opportunity to participate in any way, shape, or form that you can and bring your friends along. And they're in this for the long haul, so I think we can be hands and feet of Jesus, just like I tell my kids, for the long haul as well.
That's fantastic. So really, if you think about the levels, there's the engagement where you can just provide food and supplies, bring it here. There's the people who take it from here, bring it down there, and there's also ways for you to volunteer down there.
You would check the Bethlehem Lutheran website for that.
So
we have links.
That's through them and not through us. But also the final way is we can also continue to give financially for their work. And all of those ways, I think, are critical ways for us to be connected with that ministry. So the neat thing about Incarnation is I think we have not only the generosity of heart and spirit, but the ability to do multiple things at the same time. So we want to be able to be people who respond to this crisis in that way and continue that for the long haul. But we also have a long-standing relationship with Ralph Reeder and an initiative we generally do in the summer that's taking on a little bit of a different form this year. And Becky, would you describe that for us?
Yes, I will. So, Tons of Love has been a tradition at Incarnation during the month of July, where we've invited people to bring physical donations of food and household items, and we would make a big pile out in the atrium, and we'd get excited each week about weighing that pile and seeing how many donations over the course of the month we gathered. Well, now we have COVID-19, and the Ralph Reeder Food Shelf has had to reconfigure their distribution model significantly. They are no longer asking for physical donations. They are asking for financial donations because, frankly, it allows them to simplify by purchasing from distributors who, by the way, can get a better deal for the dollars that they spend than you and I can get when we go to Cub. But it also allows for them to know exactly what they're getting, package boxes, deliver boxes to clients' trunks when they come through the drive-through in a completely no-touch fashion. So our weighty response, or our loving response to a weighty issue this year, is to invite financial donations so that we can support our partners in the best possible way that we can do that this year.
Do we have a particular goal that we're looking at?
Yeah, we do. We have a $15,000 goal. So our hope is that we will gather the donations from this community and those out in the world who are being a part of this community without walls of $15,000 in this campaign.
And you can do that in what ways?
Yes, you can write a check to Incarnation and put Ralph Reeder Food Shelf for Tons of Love in the memo, or you can go onto Incarnation's secured site and make an online donation. And we will gather those donations, and off they will go to Ralph Reeder at the end of July.
Great. So we're anticipating through July at this point for the timeline?
Through July
Great.
for the time. I mean, under the umbrella of Tons of Love, of course, you're welcome to donate to Ralph Reeder at any time, and we will get those donations to them. But under the umbrella of Tons of Love, just to the end of July.
Yeah. Well, even though you're not in this physical space with us, I want you to kind of clap and affirm the two of them for just listening to the call, and how much work is that just to hear and understand, but then how much even more is it for us to be able to respond. And so, Lori, thank you. Becky, thank you. Just a reminder, Incarnation is able to do these things because of our generosity and our capacity. And so if your heart is being led toward the work that's happening in the Midway, find ways to be connected with that on multiple volunteer levels and financial levels. If it's going to be leaning toward Tons of Love and our continued relationship, which many of you have already, find a way over this next month and a half specifically to give toward that ministry, because there's a lot of people in the Midway and there's a lot of people in our communities. I think 35% increase is what we've heard of use of the food shelf since March. That's critical for us to understand and know. Thanks in advance for your generosity, and thanks again for the two of you.